and/or various universities. These parents are a catalog of wealth and privilege. They include, for example, CEOs of private and public companies, successful securities and real estate investors, two well-known actresses, a famous fashion designer, and the co-chairman of a global law firm. Based on the charges unsealed today, all of them knowingly conspired with Singer and others to help their children either cheat on the SAT or ACT and/or buy their children's admission to elite schools through fraud. Singer's clients paid him anywhere between $100,000 and $6.5 million for this service, though the majority paid between $250,000 and $400,000 per student. This case is about the widening corruption of elite college admissions through the steady application of wealth combined with fraud. There can be no separate college admission system for the wealthy, and I'll add that there will not be a separate criminal justice system either. Every year, hundreds of thousands of hardworking, talented students strive for admission to elite schools. As every parent knows, these students work harder and harder every year in a system that appears to grow more and more competitive every year. And that system is a zero-sum game. For every student admitted through fraud, an honest, genuinely talented student was rejected. The parents charged today, despite already being able to give their children every legitimate advantage in the college admissions game, instead chose to corrupt and illegally manipulate the system for their benefit. We're not talking about donating a building so that a school's more likely to take your son or daughter. We're talking about deception and fraud, fake test scores, fake athletic credentials, fake photographs, bribed college officials. As you can see from the various charging documents unsealed today in this case, the investigation was complex and extremely labor-intensive. Two defendants will plead guilty this afternoon. As I mentioned before, William Singer will plead guilty at 2:30 today in this courthouse, and John Vandemore, who is the head sailing coach at Stanford University, will also plead guilty today at 3 p.m. I want to thank the 4 prosecutors in my office who were assigned to this investigation for their extraordinary work on this case. The lead prosecutor on this matter, Eric Rosen, is up here with me today. I also want to thank the FBI and the IRS for their usual professionalism and skill in the investigation and takedown of this case. The takedown today involved over 200 federal agents nationwide who arrested 50 people in 6 states and on both coasts. With that, I'll hand things over to Joe Bonavolonta, who is the special agent in charge of the Boston office of the FBI. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Once again, my name is Joe Bonavolonta, and I'm the special agent in charge of the FBI Boston Division. Operation Varsity Blues culminated early this morning when approximately 300 special agents from the FBI and the IRS criminal investigations set out to arrest 46 individuals across the country for their roles in an international college admissions bribery and money laundering scam. So far, 38 individuals have been safely taken into custody, and 7 are working towards surrender. 1 is being actively pursued. Another 4 are expected to plead guilty here in Boston, 2 later today, and 2 in the coming weeks. We believe all of them, parents, coaches, and facilitators, lied, cheated, and covered up their crimes at the expense of hardworking students and taxpayers everywhere. Our investigation began last May after we uncovered evidence of a large-scale, elaborate fraud while working an unrelated undercover operation. Following 10 months of intense investigative efforts using a variety of sophisticated techniques, the FBI uncovered what we believe is a rigged system, robbing students all over the country of their right at a fair shot to getting into some of the most elite universities in this country, such as Yale, Stanford, and Georgetown. We believe everyone charged here today had a role in fostering a culture of corruption and greed that created an uneven playing field for students trying to get into these schools the right way through hard work, good grades, and community service. Unfortunately, what many students didn't know was that the odds had already been stacked against them by corrupt practices, including but not limited to bribery, falsification of athletic profiles, and near perfect SAT and ACT scores that were fraudulently obtained on behalf of other students, when in reality they were far from perfect. Make no mistake, this is not a case where parents were acting in the best interests of their children. This is a case where they flaunted their wealth, sparing no expense, to cheat the system so they could set their children up for success with the best education money could buy, literally. Some spent anywhere from $200,000 to $6.5 million for guaranteed admission. Their actions were, without a doubt, insidious, selfish, and shameful. And the real victims in this case are the hardworking students who did everything they could to set themselves up for success in the college admissions process, but ended up being shut out because far less qualified students and their families simply bought their way in. What's also cause for concern is how this was even allowed to happen in the first place. Evidence we've obtained shows that trusted coaches and administrators manipulated the systems their universities had in place to accommodate students with fake athletic credentials, some of whom did not even play the sports they were recruited to play. It's a sham that strikes at the core of the college admissions process at universities across the country. And the alleged mastermind behind it, Rick Singer, offered a variety of cheating options as part of a widespread conspiracy to enrich himself, while also facilitating cheating on SAT and ACT exams, recruiting applicants onto competitive athletic teams in exchange for bribes, and concealing the nature and source of those bribes. There's no telling what their school of thought was while carrying out this conspiracy, but today's arrests should be a warning to others. You can't pay to play, you can't lie and cheat to get ahead, because you will get caught. This was a complex and demanding investigation, and it was charged accordingly. The use of the RICO statute signals the magnitude of the criminal enterprise and the seriousness of the crimes. I would like to personally recognize the investigators and prosecutors who pursued this case. However, our work is not done. Our investigation continues, and we will continue to find and stop those who aren't playing by the rules, because as you can see in this case, the impact on everyday people is real, has consequences, and broad-ranging effect. My sincerest appreciation for the tremendous work done by the United States Attorney and his team, as well as my thanks to Special Agent in Charge Christina O'Connell and her folks at the IRS Criminal Investigation for their continued partnership and support. This was truly a team effort. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you all for being here. I'd like to thank U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling and FBI Special Agent in Charge Joseph Bonavolenta for the opportunity to address you here today. Again, my name is Christina O'Connell. I'm the Special Agent in Charge of the IRS Criminal Division of the Boston Field Office. This morning, special agents from IRS Criminal Investigation, alongside the FBI, arrested dozens of individuals for their role in a nationwide scheme to exchange bribes for college admissions. At the center of this sweeping financial crime is William Rick Singer. Singer and the others arrested today conspired to not only make and receive bribes, but to also funnel those bribe payments through a bogus charity founded by Singer. Utilizing this charitable business facade, Singer was able to conceal the true source and nature of the bribe payments. Then, to further the false legitimacy, Singer advised parents making the bribes that they could deduct the illicit payments as charitable donations on their own individual income tax returns. Overall, IRS Criminal Investigation and the FBI traced over $25 million in bribes laundered through this alleged charity founded by Singer. Overall, our investigators also revealed that the true objective of those involved was not charity at all, but greed. IRS criminal investigation will continue to collaborate with our law enforcement partners in the United States Attorney's Office on these complex financial investigations to ensure that the honest American taxpayers receive the message that IRS criminal investigation will never let financial corruption and greed trump hard work and honest effort. Thank you.
Questions?
How did Boston become the lead office to prosecute this case?
Well, it appears to be a conspiracy nationwide in scope. There are several connections to the Boston area. So fake test scores, for example, were submitted to Boston College, Boston University, and Northeastern. Two of the defendants live in the state. A lot of the conspiratorial activity, phone calls, meetings, did happen here. And we frankly have the resources and the sophistication to take down a case of this magnitude.
Do you have any idea how many students were able to make it into these schools over the years?
We don't know the total number. As Special Agent in Charge Bonavolenta mentioned, this is still ongoing. So the 33 parents who we have charged, their children were able to get in somewhere. There are more than that. There are more than that, but I'm not prepared to give you a total. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? Well, there are two aspects to that question, right? Well, there are two aspects to that question, right? There is what is the reaction? We leave that to the schools. We leave that to the schools. That's as to charges against them. As to charges, we're still considering that. It's not an accident. We're still considering that. It's not an accident that there are no students charged in these charging documents. The parents, the other defendants, are clearly the prime movers of this fraud. It remains to be seen whether we charge any of the students.
What degree did the students that graduate? How many students percentage are in fraudulent students that actually graduate fraudulently?
I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? Well, they're essentially. Well, there are essentially more broadly. There were essentially two kinds of fraud. Singer was selling. One was Singer was selling. Cheat on the SAT or ACT. Cheat on the SAT or ACT. And the other was connections with Division I coaches and Division I coaches to get these parents' kids into school with these parents' kids into credentials. Some parents took advantage of one. Some parents took advantage of one. I think Miss Huffman, for example, took advantage of one of these, which was the SAT. Some took advantage of the other, and some took advantage of the other. There's no pattern that way. There's no pattern that way. I can't comment on that. I can't comment on that. I think what I can say is that I think what I can say is that our first lead in this case interviews came during interviews with an entirely separate who gave us a tip that this activity might be going on. Well, I think he began in this college counseling business and built up his connections over time. I think built up his connections over time. I can't really comment. As you can tell from the charging documents, the recruitment part of the scam depended on the personal relationship Division I coaches with Division I coaches at a variety of elite schools. That varied tremendously. So, for example, when you look at the complaint affidavit, you will see instances. It's important to parents that their child that this had occurred, and in that kind of instance, the student would actually go and take the exam. The student would actually someone working for Singer would come in afterward, correct enough of the answers, submit the exam for the answers. In some instances, however, the child did. In some instances, however, the child did know. And in fact, there's an instance in the particular defendant and his daughter, are on a conference call with Singer. So there was a pretty wide range. So there was a pretty wide range tried to play this. How parents Singer, I think, attempted to accommodate. And Singer, I think, attempted to accommodate whatever the parents wanted to do. It was both. So
it was both.
There is at least there is one coach. There is one coach did not take any of the money. Did not take any of the money for himself. The other coaches all took some money. The other coaches all took some money for themselves. Some took all of it for themselves. Some took all of it for themselves. Gave some portion to the school's program. Gave some portion to the school's program. And took some for their own use. And took some for their own use.
Was this case tied to the invention? Another case your lead that Jerome Allen gave your lead. Was this the Jerome Allen?
No, it was not. No,
You said,
it was
the
not.
BC, you said, the BC Northeastern BU, organizations brought to new library submissions.
Well, they all received test scores.
Well,
that
they
were
all
artificially
received
inflated
test
through
scores
the
that were
cheating,
artificially inflated
through the
scandal.
cheating. In one instance,
Scandal.
as you'll see in the complaint,
In one
it
instance,
appears
as
that
you'll
one of the
see in the
defendants,
complaint, it appears that one of the
entered a quid
defendants
pro quo with Singer,
entered a
where
quid pro
Singer
quo with Singer,
would
where
help
Singer
that defendant
would
student
help
commit fraud,
that
and
defendant
in
student
exchange
commit fraud,
the
and in
parent
exchange
would help
the
one of
parent
Singer's other
would
clients
help
with
one of Singer's
admission
other
to
clients
Northeastern
with
University.
admission
I know it's a little
to
confusing, but you'll see
Northeastern
that. I know it's a little
in
confusing,
the
but you'll see that in the complaint. I think that's an important distinction to draw. It appears that the schools are not involved. It appears that the schools are not involved. It appears that in all of these instances, it appears that in all of these instances, with the exception of one USC administrator,
with the exception of one
USC administrator who we have charged,
University of Southern California.
the coaches were allotted slots.
The
for
coaches
athletic
were
recruitment.
allotted slots for athletic
The
recruitment.
coaches worked with Singer.
The coaches worked
Meaning they
with
accepted
Singer.
bribes.
Meaning they
Singer
accepted
gave
bribes.
the coaches
Singer
sufficiently
gave the
impressive
coaches
fake athletic
sufficiently
credentials.
impressive fake
The coaches
athletic
used
credentials.
those
The
athletic
coaches
profiles
used those
to
athletic
convince
profiles
everyone else internally
to convince
that this
everyone
was a
else
good recruit for
internally
the team,
that this was a good recruit
person
for
was
the
hot,
team.
the person was admitted,
person was hot,
and the coach
person was
pocketed a
admitted,
bribe.
and the coach pocketed a bribe.
Can you talk about some of the punishments, the level of punishment?
It's a little premature for that.
It's
I mean,
a little
the statutes
premature
that
for that.
we charge
I mean, the
people under all
statutes
have
that
very
we
high
charge people
statutory
under all have very
maximums,
high
but the actual
statutory
sentence that
maximums.
someone might
But
face,
the actual sentence
we
that
just
someone
don't
might
know
face,
that yet. It's
we just don't know that yet.
Some of
very
these
premature
bribes
for that.
are
Some of these
substantial.
bribes
Bribes
are
between,
substantial.
Usually
bribes
between
between
$250,000
usually
between
between
$250,000.
$250,000.
Actually, I should say donations to Singer.
Actually, I should say
from
donations
which he
to
made
Singer
these bribes
from
of
which he
college
made
coaches.
these
So it's a little
bribes
premature
of
to say
college coaches.
what ranges.
So it's a little premature to
sentencing,
say what
they might be.
ranges of sentencing they might be.
Well, I mean, I think as you guys know, and as you can see in the complaint
as you guys know,
affidavit,
and as you can see in the
we do
complaint affidavit,
occasionally flip targets.
we
and they
do
wind up
occasionally
cooperating.
flip targets,
but I
and they
can't
wind up
comment whether
cooperating.
any of these people.
But I can't
will. I
comment
will say
whether
that
any
the
of these people
investigation.
will. I will say that the
remains
investigation.
active. These are not the only
remains
parents
active.
involved.
These are not
We
the only
suspect
parents
these probably
involved.
aren't the only
We
coaches.
suspect these probably aren't the
involved.
only coaches.
And so we will be
involved.
moving ahead.
And so we
to
will
look
be
for
moving
additional
ahead
targets.
to look for additional targets. I'm sorry? I'm sorry? Meaning was he an employee of any of these
Meaning was he
universities?
an employee of any of these universities?
Sitting here now, I do not know the answer to that.
Sitting here
I'm
now,
sorry.
I do not know the answer to that. I'm sorry. I'm not going to comment on that.
You said that he's planning on pleading guilty today. What has been the conversation? What's led up to that? Obviously, he didn't just hear about these charges this morning. Can you shed any light on that?
I can't shed a lot of light on that because most of that is confidential. I can state the obvious, which is that we identified Singer some time ago, and he has decided under a plea agreement to plead guilty to racketeering, among other charges. You knew that already, but that's really all I can tell you.
Anything about the sentencing tied to that plea agreement?
Offhand, I don't remember what the provisions of the plea agreement will say about sentencing, but the plea agreement should ultimately be a public document, and you will be able to see that yourself. It will be docketed.
You mentioned that it appears that the schools are not involved, with the exception of that one administrator. Are the schools under investigation versus the individuals there? Are they currently part of your ongoing investigation?
Right now, the schools themselves are not targets of this investigation. As you can see from the charges we brought, the investigation was very broad. We've charged a lot of people throughout the investigation and our investigation of each of these targets. We have not seen the schools as co-conspirators with this activity.
Thank you.
How long has this investigation been underway since that first lead you got?
I think it's been under investigation a little over a year. Am I right about that?
Yep.
A little over a year.
What would happen when the students who purportedly played these sports get to this? These are big programs, Division I programs, and they don't play the sport.
It varied. Some simply never showed up for the athletics. Some pretended an injury And I think some played briefly and then quit.
One of the defendants is from the case. Can you tell us more about that?
Beyond what's in the complaint affidavit, I cannot tell you more about that.
And are any students still currently enrolled, children of these parents that you've charged? Or are we talking about past?
No, as you'll see from the charging documents, most of this activity is fairly current. So I assume, I can't tell you directly, that the vast majority of the students admitted under false pretenses are in these schools and are enrolled and are active students.
All right. Did any of these non-athletes get athletic scholarships in addition?
I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that based on what I've seen in the charging documents, I don't think that's the case. I think they got admission, but I don't think they got separate athletic scholarships. What Singer was good at doing was calibrating the fake credentials to appear realistic and not so impressive as to invite suspicion or additional scrutiny.
Did he have any legitimate clients, or was it just entirely a scheme?
I don't know the answer to that.
One more question.
One of the defendants is still being actively pursued. Can you go into any detail on that?
One defendant is in Hawaii, and so it's a time difference. Question, there are rules governing at what times of day federal agents can make arrests, so you can't show up at 2 o'clock in the morning and arrest somebody. And so that's what accounts for that.
Evan Riddle, when he would take the exams, because I know sometimes he would change the answers, but is it like he was especially equipped to answer those questions correctly, or was he cheating and filling in the answers for all the exams?
He was just a really smart guy. So if I understand your question correctly, he did not have inside information about the correct answers. He was just smart enough to get a near perfect score on demand or to calibrate the score. So Singer would discuss with his clients what kind of score they're looking for. So if your daughter took the SAT on her own the first time and got a particular score, retaking the exam, if her score goes up too much, that would invite scrutiny. And so Singer would discuss with parents what kind of score was impressive, but not too impressive, and then would instruct Riddell to attempt to get that score. And he was just good enough to do it.
What did Riddell do? Did he have any
I'm not sure how much of that is public, so I'm going to err on the side of not answering that. I think in the charging document for Riddell, which is now public, you will find whatever I'm allowed to say on that point, but I don't remember it standing here.
How do they actually change the SAT and ACT scores? Like, what do they actually do?
Well, Riddell would either take the exam in place of the student or would correct answers after the student handed in the card with his or her answers on it. And that would be submitted to the SAT, to the College Board or ETS for the SAT, or to ACT Incorporated for the ACT, and it would just be scored under that person's name.
Did the College Board ever have any inclination, was there anything that they thought there might be cheating going on? Did any of the prompting of this investigation come from them?
I can't comment on that.
There are two pretty prominent actresses that you mentioned. Is it safe to say they were among those who were arrested without incident today?
Yes.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.